This is a moment of uncertainty like none of us have ever seen in our lifetimes.
We are setting an amazing benchmark. We must continue.
Which is a great benchmark.
And we will always do more to fight climate change.
How are you feeling after your recent separation from Sophie?
Which terms do Justin Trudeau and his ex-wife Sophie use and repeat to win people's sympathy and convince them of their good intentions? These questions are relevant in understanding all political speeches. Welcome to the channel where we look at what influential people say, what they really say. Subscribe for more videos. Welcome aboard. In the speeches we're about to see, Justin and Sophie talk about all the wonderful things they've done and want to do. However, what do they actually say? What's the background in which they get the audience riled up? Let's find out. What do you think about the speeches? Let us know in the comments. Politicians and their spouses focus on keywords, buzzwords and platitudes that they want the audience to focus on. After several repetitions, many people will start associating the politician with this positive word or phrase. This is called priming, the phenomenon in which prior exposure to specific language forms or meanings influences a speaker's subsequent language comprehension or production. So, for example, if the politician identifies certain actions as empowering, many people will eventually start associating the same actions that they observe in their own lives as being empowering, even though that might not be the case at all. I talk more about that in this short. In relation to priming, let's take note of the word benchmark and what Sophie associates it with in the following.
You know, we're also very proud that there are so many amazing women candidates in our party. We are setting an amazing benchmark. We must continue.
Justin and Sophie have both made women their primary talking point, trying to get both men and women to see themselves as distinct groups first and foremost, so that the group members in each group don't start focusing on their individual differences, their different opinions, dreams and goals, despite sharing the same innate characteristics. When a person sees himself or herself as a group member, he or she is easier for politicians to upset and control. Here, Sophie could have just said that she's met many amazing candidates, but the interesting thing is that she doesn't, because she has to flatter the overwhelming majority of their voters. Therefore, I believe her when she says,
and I have to say,
the term benchmark is associated with the female candidates. Thus, in theory, this is priming that the next time people see female candidates, they're to regard this phenomenon as a benchmark, which literally means a standard, a point of reference against which things may be compared. Sophie's dear friend also uses this term in the same type of context, showing that this type of rhetoric has been standardized, maybe even coordinated.
Yeah, so last February actually, I went to Rwanda, which was incredible because Rwanda has the highest percentage of female political participants of any other country in the world. So 64% of their government is female. And in that, yes, so many of the men were lost in the genocide. So it gave women an opportunity to either succumb to that or to then find some strength and then mobilize in a way that was really empowering. And I think that's specifically what they've done, which is a great benchmark for what women all over the world could be doing.
We must continue, she says. We constitutes an audience, a supposed collective consisting of everyone in the room. Must implies urgency, as if their policies must be supported, and as if we are the only ones that can. The verb continue implies that they're already doing great things. Next, we should note Sophie's many feel words and words that imitate closeness, trying to make people associate her and Justin with terms like consideration and compassion.
I met with many of them this week, and I'm so touched to see the quality of human beings, of minds and hearts on this journey with us, trying to make the lives of Canadians better across this country. I feel grateful and blessed, and I want to thank you for supporting them.
Touched, grateful, and blessed are all emotional experiences that she claims to have had. She prefaces these adjectives with the personal pronoun I, underlining the connection she's trying to establish between the feel words and her, and by extension Justin. Human beings, minds and hearts, journey with us, all nouns that simulate closeness. 3 remarks. 1. She and Justin are able to see and judge people's hearts, presumably. 2. She doesn't say crowd or audience, but human beings, which connotes respect of each and every person. 3. She doesn't call it a political campaign, which it literally is, but the much less distancing and positive journey, which connotes community and unity. Next, it's interesting to note that when Sophie struggles a bit with what to say, she resorts to the key word, the key demographic that she and Justin appeal to. It doesn't seem to matter to her that her statements have any substance, as long as she uses the key word, or control word, if you will. That's because politicians know that people tend to remember singular words and phrases, and not necessarily the context that these words and phrases occurred in. Let's watch.
I was with Neelam this week, Neelam Bar. Yeah, your own Neelam Bar from Burnaby. And we visited a senior's home, and we had a wonderful luncheon for women in leadership. And I have to say that I feel very lucky, and we all feel very lucky to have great women like her and Sarah and so many others here in Vancouver and across the country. And it is advanced polling day, so we will continue to knock doors, to get out the vote, because it's not done until we reach the end, and the end will only be a new beginning.
This clip demonstrates that content doesn't have to be a prerequisite for applause. With the words your own, Sophie continues to use language that simulates closeness and connotes community. 3 times she uses the noun women in context, where she could have just described these people's talents. But instead she puts the primary focus on their innate characteristics, the group they belong to. Okay, looks like I'm part of this group, so I better vote for the same candidate as everyone else in the group, is the reaction that politicians hope to get from this kind of group rhetoric. The downside to this is that the demographic in question sees the condescension. Let's look at Justin's word choice and see what detailed and specific things he has to say.
Thank you for your energy, your ambition, and your dedication to the future of this great country. Every day, you are helping us earn the privilege to keep working hard for Canadians.
To really understand his statements, it's useful to know the 4 pillars of political advertising. 1. Positive details about the candidate, their alleged achievements and goals. 2. The policies, as generic and unspecific as possible, in order to prevent division and secure unity. 3. Rhetorical attacks on the opponent. 4. Showing that the politician is in sync with the values and wishes of ordinary people. Politicians always mix thank you speeches with so-called national ethos, which is an element from epidictic speeches that reflect on a country's alleged shared values and visions. This kind of ethos is designed to make it sound like the speaker is the most competent and credible candidate to unify the given country. It's also a chance for the politician to sound humble.
Earn the privilege. Are we going to go back to the failed policies of the Harper years, or are we going to keep moving forward?
Without explaining what forward, another word with positive connotations, means, he presupposes that he is the positive contrast, the protagonist, to the antagonist he mentions initially. In just a short clip like this, all 4 pillars of political advertising are represented. Positive personal details and very general political goals, pillars 1 and 2, attacking the opponent and showing that he's in sync with people's wishes, pillars 3 and 4. Because who wouldn't want to move forward, whatever this means?
Dan Boucher wants to give a $50,000 tax cut to multimillionaires. And we want to cut taxes for middle-class Canadians.
People don't clap because evidence is presented to them. They clap because they identify as being part of the collective identity that Justin and Sophie have successfully constituted. The difference between individuality and community is expressed by Justin's self-repair from I to we.
And we.
Also, even if it's true that his opponent wants to give tax cuts to multi-millionaires, which it likely is, this doesn't necessarily create the disparity between them that Justin wants people to think there is, because two things can be right at the same time. His opponent could want tax cuts for both multimillionaires and the middle class, so this isn't an actual argument. Furthermore, nothing comes for free. People should ask questions like, do we really get tax cuts, or will the price in other areas of society go up to compensate for these cuts? For example, Denmark is often praised for its free education system. However, it's not free. In order to compensate for this great free system that the politicians want people to think it is, taxes and fees in other areas go up. Thus, taxes and fees on groceries, cars and houses, to name a few, are very high. The intentional vagueness, which is a standard part of political rhetoric, keeps getting more and more apparent.
Andrew Scheer wants to scrap the first and only national climate plan Canada has ever had, and we will always do more to fight climate change. Andrew Scheer wants to cut the services you rely on most, and we want to keep investing in your future. That's the choice.
Again, all four pillars are represented, with a special emphasis on the second pillar being as unspecific as possible. In that regard, what does do more even mean? What are the services you rely on the most? No one seems to care, as long as it sounds good. Also, once again, Justin deliberately creates a disparity between him and his opponent. Even if it were true that his opponent wanted to cut the services that people relied on the most, whatever that means, he would still have to argue why these cuts weren't an investment in the future. Whatever the platitude, investing in your future, is supposed to mean, other than attributing positive qualities to him, which is what the first pillar is about. One of the ways politicians strengthen their ethos, competence and credibility is by mentioning numbers, as if numbers are arguments in themselves. Studies have shown that this numbers tactic works, as people associate numbers with facts, even if the politicians don't give grounds for their claims apparently.
So you chose a new team with a new plan. And 4 years later, Canadians have created more than 1 million new jobs. We've lifted 900,000 people out of poverty, including 300,000 kids. And the new Canada Child Benefit is helping parents with hundreds of dollars tax-free every single month.
The last thing I'll point out is the rise in narratives in political advertising, especially in the last decade.
Because we chose to trust in Canadians and invest in people.
This is the intro to his narrative, trust and invest. In academia, there's a very non-academic word for what he's doing here. I'll euphemize it as the nonsense factor. It's when someone says something that's so obvious that everyone would agree with it. Who wouldn't agree that you should trust people? And who wouldn't agree that you should invest in people? Assuming that we know what this deliberately vague phrase was supposed to mean. Nothing, of course. Yet, this is the kind of generic language that he hopes to get away with and gets away with. Next, he begins the narrative, a narrative which exemplifies his alleged trust and investment in people, portraying him as a considerate leader.
People like Bree and Marcus, a young couple who I met in Maple Ridge last spring. They were looking to buy their first home, but like so many Canadians, they were worried that they might not be able to reach that dream anytime soon. See, in Canada, owning a house should be a realistic goal. It's where you set down roots. It's where you raise a family and where you grow old. But young people hoping to buy their first home, just like their parents did, are facing a tough housing market, and that's especially true here in the Lower Mainland. So to help people like Bree and Marcus, we launched the new first-time homebuyer incentive, which provides Canadians with up to 10% off the purchase price of their first home. All right.
Politicians use the stories of ordinary people to put faces on the causes they claim to fight for. That's why he refers to them by their first names, as if we all know who they are. It's a way of creating immediate familiarity. This type of narrative can be understood as a part which represents the whole, in this case the alleged problem associated with buying property, designed to make the audience identify themselves with the characters in the narrative and ultimately identify themselves with the politician who's considerate enough to consider them in his speech. In this process, the audience is supposed to ignore counter-questions like, do these people actually exist? Has the politician actually met these people? What's the direct link between these people's circumstances and Justin's policies? How did we get from one couple to Justin's plan working for all people? Today, making people feel like they're part of a community is still one of Justin's most prominent tactics. Even when asked about his divorce, he evades the question about how he's feeling with an appeal to Canadians.
How are you feeling after your recent separation from Sophie?
First, I want to thank all the people who've reached out over the past number of weeks. I got a really good 10 days to focus on moving forward, and I really want to thank Canadians for having been so incredibly gracious and incredibly generous in respecting our privacy and our space.
Thus, even when he's asked personal questions, he stays in character and keeps the rhetorical strategies in mind, moving forward, as he also says, which echoes the slogan in the speech we've just seen. In the following, his statements could have just as easily been used by a religious leader. The words are very similar, if not identical.
I also want to take a moment to give a very special thank you to Suzanne Cowan. Suzanne, you've been on the front lines since 2013. You've knocked on thousands of doors, connected with Canadians in every province and territory. Our Liberal movement wouldn't be the same without you. And even though this is your last convention as LPC president, you will always be part of this Liberal team as one of our chief volunteers. How about a huge round of applause for everyone from Suzanne?
In a speech, everything a politician says is part of their self-branding, even when he or she is applauding someone else. Because the first question any analyst should ask is, why didn't he say this when the cameras weren't rolling? Because it's designed to portray him as someone who, despite the large following, is able to see each individual in the crowd and acknowledge them. Knocked on thousands of doors, connected with Canadians in every province and territory, movement. This is religiously charged language, almost resembling the Great Commission. This isn't unique for Justin, but his way of doing it is consistent and obviously effective. He makes people feel like they're part of something bigger. This makes them feel good, and when they feel good, they forget to ask critical questions. In the final clip, we should note his use of affective prosody. Affective prosody is yet another pathos tactic that politicians use. Affective prosody refers to variations in pitch, loudness, and rate to convey emotions. It's a result of hours of rehearsal, but delivered as if it comes from the heart.
This is a moment of uncertainty like none of us have ever seen in our lifetimes. And in this moment, as Canadians, as Liberals, we must remember who we are. The world is changing fast, but our top priority will always remain building a better today and tomorrow for you and for your kids. This is the foundation of everything we do.
I hope you found this exciting. Like and subscribe for more videos. See you next time.